Okay, hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. It's been a while since I have started this book and finished it. I want to say, gosh, it took me, over a month to finish this. I think it was because I had other things that I was reading, and I also was tabbing and writing notes. But I think it was mostly the fact that other things I was reading, that I had somewhat of a schedule that I wanted to finish them on. That kind of slowed me down. But this is my first of my Oxford World's Classics that I finished. At some point, I'm going to have to bring out my whole, collection that I have of my Oxford World's Classics. I was going through my extra stash. I have my main stash of books that's upstairs where I can access it. Then downstairs in our basement where I can really only go if someone's awake, just because it makes my family feel better. I don't always do very well on stairs since getting disabled, but those books down there are my less frequently accessed. Those are ones I've already read and maybe eventually might get rid of, or are going to be infrequent rereads. Anyway, when I was down there, I found that I had an Oxford's World's Classic version of Le Morte d'Arthur. I forgot that I had two versions. I have one that's by Dorothy Armstrong, who I fell in love with her Great Courses classes. I think I have all of her Great Courses classes, both digitally and on DVD, because I have enjoyed every single one of her courses that I've ever taken. So when I saw that she had a book on Le Morte d'Arthur, I picked that up, and I think I already had the Oxford World's Classics. Now my Morte d'Arthur, for probably saying it wrong because, again, French. If you watched my last video where I talk about the Mystery of the Yellow Room, I discuss or mention briefly that I cannot pronounce French. Just like for Jules Verne, who is also another French author. Anyway. Where was I going with that? Oh, Le Morte d'Arthur. So I have both of those copies, but that was probably the first Oxford World's Classic I actually picked up was Le Morte d'Arthur, even though I forgot about it when I picked up my big old Dorsey Armstrong copy. Now, I'm not sure if there's more commentary in the Dorsey Armstrong, which I have to check, or if it's just that the Oxford World's Classics just has such teeny-weeny text, and that's why it's so much smaller. I'm sure it's probably a mixture of the two, because, you know the size of the Oxford World's Classics. My Dorsey Armstrong is not only taller, it's thicker. So I doubt it's just the size of the text that's making the difference. But anyway, at some point I'll have to pull out all my Oxford World's Classics that I've gotten over the past year or so and just show the little pile I'm developing. But this is Jules Verne. This is his Around the World in 80 Days. This is the first time that I've read a translator that is on, when I looked up an article about best translators for Jules Verne, this was on that list. This particular translator was on that list. And I feel like I've touched on a little bit of my thoughts on this in a previous video, but I can't remember how much I touched on it, so I'm going to do so again now. So, I think I've read it. I read it, I want to say, in high school, or whether it was part of my classwork or just on my own, I can't remember. But I also was first introduced to it in those children's illustrated classics. So I've read this book in a couple different forms. I'm so sorry. But never in a translation where it probably was the most accurate translation I could get. Now, my one big beef, and I think I mentioned this in a different video, is that I don't care for the commentary for William Butcher. For me, the fact that he gives an accurate translation still makes his book worth picking up. I also have his Journey to the Center of the Earth translation, and I will eventually be picking up his 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea translation, even though I don't necessarily care for his commentary, at least not on Around the World in 80 Days. He seemed to make a point of trying to find sexual innuendo or imagery where it really didn't feel like it had a place. And you might have argued, like, okay, maybe once or twice you could see that, but some of the stretches, they were just crazy extreme. Like, oh, they bore a hole in the wall, so that has some sort of sexual undertone, or it was just weird, some of the reaches he made. It just felt like, okay, I think you just kind of have your mind in the gutter and maybe pull it out a little bit. It just, I just felt that there were points where he sometimes missed the point because he was so focused on it. I have several parts where I mention in his commentaries, like, gosh, this again? Oh my goodness. Now, I did like things like about Passepartout's name. So, like, Passepartout is a skeleton tea. Let me try that again. Jean Passepartout. A Passepartout is a skeleton key or other object that can pass everywhere. So I thought, okay, that's cool. Or the fun facts about initially in one version, his name was Jean Fernandez or Jean Fricodet. And they said that this comes from fricoter, which is to stew, to plot, to be on a fiddle, or to sleep with. There are versions where he was called Master Jean, or most frequently, Jean. So, and another version he was called Jean-Francois. So those kind of things I found interesting about some of the things you would find in other versions. Some of the changes that were made, I think that Jules Verne made it for the better. Actually, I think the finished product was exactly where it needed to be, Now, what I thought was interesting, I'm not going to give away the ending, but the thing that they mentioned is at the very end, on a note about the end, he mentioned that it did not have a different version. There's like 3 different versions that they pull of, like the actual one he ended up with, and I guess 2 other copies or 2 other not edits. Wow, I can't pull the term out of my brain right now. Anyway, 2 other pre-workings, that's not the word I'm looking for, drafts of this novel in various different points of being finished. So that's where you'll see some of these differences between, I think they're called MS1 and MS2, and there might even be an MS3, I can't remember. So those are just your different manuscripts. But from what they said, he mentioned, which I thought was interesting, is a remarkable feature of all the versions of this passage, so the very end, from the original notes and those 3 drafts to the published book, is the consistency of the underlying message. And I don't want to say what the underlying message is because when you read the book, you will see it. But it's that last paragraph. Last page, where they talk about what the whole point of everything was. So that's kind of cool that he always had that in mind. That was his end goal for this story. With all his different drafts, that was where he was headed. So that consistency of vision, even if it took him a certain point to get there, I thought that was interesting. Now, there were points that I do think that the commentator didn't necessarily give Fogg the full credit that he deserved, and I wish I could find, let's see if I can find one of the points where I wrote notes on that. Okay, these are mostly my blue notes, which aren't quite as important. Okay, maybe try my red notes. Oh, this is interesting. I forgot about this. So they're talking about versions of Verne's work and who influenced Verne. So another possible source, another possible influence for Verne is the appropriately named George Francis Train, who made 4 trips around the world, the first in 2 years and the second in 80 days in 1870. Like Cook, Train went westwards, but similarities with Fogg's adventures include the hire of a private train and his being imprisoned. Train was in France in 1871, had previously built railways in America, and ran for the American presidency in 1872. All ideas that are echoed in Around the World in 80 Days. Train later claimed, Verne stole my thunder. I am Phileas Fogg. And there's also another note here which I thought was interesting. Now, I've tried my darndest to find the thing that's mentioned in here. So, in his lecture in 1873, The Meridians in the Calendar, Verne replies to a question about where the change of day actually happens in the Pacific. The word dateline only became current in 1880, and the Greenwich Prime Meridian was adopted internationally in 1884. He cites an article in Nature in 1872 and Poe's short story, 3 Sundays in a Week, in 1841, which is also predicated on the difference of a day due to going around the world, with the gain again closely linked to a marriage at the end. Well, sorry about that if you... spoiler. Anyway, when Verne analyzes this story in his major essay, Edgar Poe and His Works, 1864, he analyzes in detail the temporal consequences of going round the world and confuses East and West in the same way as he does in both Manuscript 1 and Manuscript 2. And apparently this is something that he does in all of his works. He does it apparently in Journey to the Center of the Earth as well. And I want to say, what was it? 7 Days in a Balloon? I can't remember how many days in a balloon. Anyway. But I tried to find the Edgar Allan Poe essay that he wrote, Edgar Poe and His Works. I could not find it in English for the life of me. I want to say I found it in Dutch, and I found a Spanish translation. I don't speak Spanish or Dutch. I was so close. This is how much I wanted to read this darn essay. I was like, well, I could pick it up and then try my best to translate it. And then if I get stuck, I could contact my Colombian grandmother, and then she and I could translate it together. And I'm like, okay, you're just going through too many steps to read the Spanish translation of this essay. But yes, hopefully eventually someone will translate the Edgar Poe and His Works essay by Jules Verne from 1864, because I'm really interested in that. It's written by an author whose work I enjoy, or at least I enjoy this work. I don't remember much of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I do need to reread that. I need to read Journey to the Center of the Earth. But I like the idea of reading Jules Verne talk about another author that I like, Edgar Allan Poe. And I need to actually get a collection of Edgar Allan Poe's works as well. But yes, I quite, to my expectation, enjoyed Around the World in 80 Days. I would have been surprised if I had not. I think I have one other. Did I hit on my red notes? Yeah, I think I did, because everything else is just random little blue notes that were just... Okay, so my system is I'll have one color that's aligned with a certain highlighter color. So I removed, I think, my sticky notes in here for that. Yeah. So what I have is usually some point in the front of the book, I will have a bunch of sticky notes. So it'll be two different colors. One will be interesting, one will be very interesting. And the highlighter color will match the tab color. And then I will tab and highlight according to what's interesting and very interesting. Then usually what I'll do is I'll try to talk about what's in the very interesting tab. So that's something I've started doing within the past few months. Just trying to get my different annotating, trying to kind of figure out the annotating style that works best for me. But yeah, if you have either not read Around the World in 80 Days or have not read this translation of Around the World in 80 Days, I do recommend it. Just don't be surprised when you get to his commentary if some of it just kind of feels a little bit like, where are you getting that from? But some of the simple facts in here are kind of cool. Like the stuff about Pastor Pateau and things like that. But yeah. Oh, I remember one of the things was they're like, wow, you're really reaching. Where they had, you remember when he's in China and he gets separated from the main group. Spoilers if you don't want to be spoiled, but I already spoiled the ending for you people. So when Pastor Pateau is separated from everybody else, and there's that point when he's in the performing group, the Long Noses. This translator decides that everyone balancing on, like building a pyramid off of these long noses where at the bottom part of the pyramid, they're like laying down. He decided that this was a sexual innuendo. Sometimes a long nose is just a long nose. Sometimes there's just no symbolism, dirty or otherwise. Sometimes a story is just a story without like any hidden, what's behind the curtain? So I think that some academics get so much in their own heads, they overthink things. Yes, can there be symbolism? Absolutely. But when you're having to reach to get the symbolism you want, maybe, go out, touch grass, and, just get a little bit out of the academic brain space for a little while and just kind of see the world as everyone else does for a bit. And be like, okay, now does this really mean have sexual innuendo? Or is it just that they had long noses in the act because that was cool? So, yeah, that's my only really real gripe with this particular translator is, like I said, he tends to reach for the conclusion that he wants to reach. And like I said, I don't doubt that some of his conclusions, some of the, ones he doesn't have to reach for, he might have something there. If he wants to say that, well, maybe you can be dealing with some repression with fog. Okay, do I agree? Not necessarily, but can I see where someone can get that? Okay. But some of this other stuff, just back up a little bit. Calm down. It's not that deep. So, it's just, anyway. That's it for Around the World in 80 Days. Very much enjoyed this. I'm really glad that I got this translation and got to enjoy it as close as I could to the way the author intended this book to be read. So, let me know if you have read any translations by William Butcher and if you too enjoy his work or if you have your own thoughts about his commentary on works, whether about Around the World in 80 Days or a different work. If you did read his commentary on Around the World in 80 Days, do you feel that he was kind of out in left field the way I do? with certain times, or do you feel like he was always spot on? So anyway, thank you very much for joining me. Hope that you have a wonderful day. And if I don't catch you before Christmas, hope that you have a Merry Christmas. Or hey, I could catch you within the 12 days of Christmas. So until that point, Merry Christmas. And if I don't see you before the New Year, Happy New Year. God bless. Bye.